Hey everybody, this is Betsy Carmody. We've covered a lot of popular culture on our little podcast, but sometimes there's a few things that just get past us. That's where the Sacred Six steps in. From Star Trek to Major League Baseball, from the streets of Baltimore on The Wire to the trails of the Camino de Santiago in Spain, the Sacred Six is there to deep dive on topics that deserve just a little more attention. So if you're looking to cover an item in popular culture from A to Z, check out the Sacred Six on the Popping Collars feed, wherever you get your podcasts. Pop, pop.
Baby girl, look at that leg, yeah. Why she acting all resi? Hey, hotter than a pan of fried bread grease. Have a native 50 power beats. Got your auntie.
Hi, I'm Greg Knight.
Hey, I'm Ryan Parker.
This is PCTV, a Popping Collar side project where we randomly select current TV show that you should be streaming right now. Ryan and I have each picked 6 shows from top streaming apps, including Netflix, Hulu, Disney Plus, Max, Prime Video, and Apple TV. And this month, talking about the Hulu / FX, I guess we should say. It's an FX series that airs on Hulu. Yeah. But it is the Hulu show Reservation Dogs.
Abnormal.
Y'all wouldn't have seen a stolen food truck, would you?
Nope.
Oh. Someone stole the truck. Broad daylight.
Put your seatbelt on.
Seatbelt.
People safety.
We're stealing a f***ing chip
I do not give a shit, man. Put your seatbelt on. We're not going. Let's go.
Apparently it was full of chips. I've never seen anything like that.
You're good thieves. Best in town.
Oh, thank you.
It is a small town.
Tell your friends.
I don't have any.
Go get some then.
Okay. We could be in California as soon as 2 months.
California, here we come.
You and your buggy ass friends. What are you gonna fight for? I just with you.
What? You guys watching this? It's gonna be like a month.
What kind of gang was both red and blue?
Indian Mafia couldn't make up their minds if they want to be Bloods or Crips more. Maybe they're Blips. Or maybe they're Cruds. Hey.
It's easy to be bad. Fight the man. It's hard to be a warrior with dignity.
We making it drop when the Glock go pop, pop, pop. Bullets can't be stopped. That Letterman chop when the Glock go pop, pop, pop. You better believe we shutting down shop when the Glock go pop, pop, pop.
Ryan, I have a brief description.
Glad you said it that way. I like it. Yeah, go. Yeah.
This, you know what's hilarious is that Betsy and I are doing the Going on 30 podcast, and we just hit Reservoir Dogs. And that the Reservoir Dogs episode of our pod comes out the week before our Reservation Dogs episode of the pod. So it's a dogs month on Popping Collars.
It's dog days of summer, if you will.
That's right.
By the way, is it boiling where you are?
Oh man, I was in the car the other day, and it's one of those things where you have the temperature gauge on the dash, and it popped up to like 102, and I'm like, yeah, no, that's ridiculous.
I just answered the phone earlier today to somebody. Why did I move back to this expletive sweaty jungle of a state? Anyway, all right, hit us up. Reservation Dogs.
I got a brief description of Reservation Dogs.
Let's go.
And then I'll let you fill in the gaps. It says this: a comedy series about 4 Native American teenagers growing up on a reservation in eastern Oklahoma. What else do we need to know about Reservation Dogs, Ryan?
Not a lot. I mean,
really?
No, of course there's more to know, but that kind of sells it. I spent the last 2 days on a hours long Zoom interviews, listening into these interviews with a filmmaker who's working on a film that we're promoting, or he directed the film we're promoting. And when people constantly asked him, why were you drawn to this movie? And he said, well, the tagline was 3 Irish women set off on a pilgrimage to Lourdes. What's not to love? And I was like, okay, well, when you said, 4 teens growing up on a reservation in Oklahoma, what's not to love? In part, if you want to talk about, and I know you always come back to these conversations toward the end of each episode, an industry perspective.
Yeah.
There's a lot to like there because we quite frankly haven't seen a show quite like this. I think there are comparisons to other FX shows, and I think it's why it fits in their ecosystem so well. It feels a little bit like Atlanta.
Mm-hmm.
I'm watching Dave right now. It's not really close to Dave, but you could kind of tie a string there a little bit. I like how, and in full disclosure, I've only watched the first season. I believe you watched both.
Mm-hmm.
And how you talked about, you told me in a text that it's to not stress over watching getting through the first season was obviously important for us to have this conversation, but not necessarily the second, because you're looking at a show that's not necessarily concerned with plot so much as it is a vibe.
Yeah.
And I totally felt that, agree with you. And I wonder if you wouldn't mind, what did you mean by that? Like and why is that important to you?
Yeah. Here's the thing. And the reason that I picked this show for our pod is because, like, if you want to get me on board with whatever it is that you've got going on, like, fire up a hangout show where teenagers are just like kicking it and, you know, figuring things out. Like, I mean, that's going to hit me every single time because it's going to take me back to like, Dazed and Confused. It's going to take me back to Clerks. It's going to take me back to like all these like hangout, just shooting with your friends, kind of situation. Like I just think it's great. And I think probably the standout for me and what really like drew me into the show was the fact that these are all, I mean, they're all actors, but they're all very young actors who don't have a whole lot of credits under their belt.
Yes.
And I mean, you talk about a solid core of like 4 kids. Like it is. Oh my God. Like the casting alone is worth recommending the show because you're going to go in thinking like, oh, okay. So like 4 rookie actors, what is it? And you're going to come away with like 4 well-defined characters, and it's just really great. I just want to hang out with them. Like that's the show. I just want to hang out with those 4 kids.
Yeah. I like how it takes a special alchemy, chemistry, if you will, to be able to capture our attention, at least for the way it sounds like it did for you and it did for me, when you don't really have anything driving the narrative forward. Of course, so for people who haven't watched the show, and this is not giving anything away at all, the biggest plot point is these 4 kids are also saving up money to go to California.
Right.
Because anywhere is better than where they are. And I want to come back to that in a minute too, as somebody who just moved back to Mississippi from California.
Let me just
but whether or not they ever get there or go is beside the point, because that's not what is driving us. In another show, in a lesser show, it would be about that. But I think you've pointed out correctly how this is not that, and it's better for it. And yeah, there's more I want to say about that, but I know that you may have a couple other things to point to.
Yeah, let me just tack on one other thing to that, which isn't a spoiler because it's really the premise of the show. The precipitating incident for this show is that this group of 4 teenagers used to be a group of 5, and one of their members is gone. And it was his dream to go to California. And so
good point.
Yeah, and so these 4 teenagers have this sort of like dream to go out there, but they don't have any money and they don't have really any purpose and they don't have a goal once they get there, but it's their dead friend's last wish in their mind.
And I'm going to tell you, and this is at risk of spoiling it, and maybe we come back to this in the spiritual theology corner, the way in which the creators of this show handled that absence is a masterclass in what precipitated that absence and the effect it has on a community, not just those 4 teenagers. And as you see that ripple effect as the season progresses, I just think it's really special.
I mean, the main thing for me and the reason that I picked the show is because it's a great hangout vibe show, but it's also like the vibes are very different from, anything that I experienced growing up. Now, I grew up in rural North Carolina, so I kind of understand like the poverty thing. I kind of understand like the country feel to it a little bit, but obviously I didn't grow up on a res, like this is a very different kind of experience, like the Native American reservation experience. And so just being invited into this world
100%.
and just seeing how everything kind of flows, right? So it's like, what does a police force look like on the res? What does the economy look like on the res? Retail, stuff like that. What are the hopes and dreams of this community? And then, of course, obviously for our podcast, how does religion and religious belief kind of weave its way through the culture, because it's not like Western church based stuff. It's just like integrated life, religious stuff. That's a part of what they do.
It's lived theology. It's a material spirituality. It's those academic kind of approaches to what this show is giving us from a pop cultural perspective. Can I ask you, because I want to come back to, I'm not quite ready to get to the theology yet, even though I think there's some of this that's bound up in it. How do you, as both of us here, white guys, on the talking about a show that is decidedly not white, we're thankful to have it in the mix of options that we have to watch. Watching so much of it resonated with me growing up in a small town.
Yeah.
And at what point can we resonate? Like, what point can we talk about those resonances without whitewashing, right? Without letting it be its own thing, even though I think that's the beautiful part about storytelling. It lets us see that there's so much that we do share, even though I love how the series doesn't translate a lot of indigenous words like the characters use in talking to each other. And we're left to kind of interpret contextually what those may be. But there is still that barrier between, well, this is not my story. Like this is, right. I can't fully relate, but there is a point at which I can get to that I think allow for some connectivity or conversation or whatever. How did you think about that as you watched the show?
Yeah, I mean, I think identity matters, right? Obviously, when it comes to how we approach these things. But I also think that like the beauty of TV series like this, when they do invite you into the world of a community, and it should be said that the creator of this show, Sterling Harjo, is, Native American. He produces this along with Taika Waititi. And one of the things that he talks about with the creation of the show is that he wrote this show, he pitched it to FX, and it was Taika who saw the script and realized that his indigenous experience, Taika's indigenous experience in New Zealand had resonances with the indigenous experience that Sterling had in Oklahoma, right?
Yeah.
And it's this idea of like, dang, how are we having similar sort of res and indigenous expenses halfway across the world from each other, right?
Yeah.
And how can we tell these stories together? And and so like where I come into this mix is like, all the cultural stuff is going to be specific to a certain population that I'm not going to be able to relate to as a white guy, but stories are what are sort of transcendent, right? And that's what allow us, when we share stories with each other, that's where we're able to tap in to like those similar experiences or something kind of akin to a mirror, right? Where you're able to say, dang, yeah, I do remember growing up in a small community. And I remember like the people who sort of felt like they had to hustle to get out of it, and the people who felt like they had to hustle to figure out how to survive in it, right? It's not dissimilar from a show that you've already brought up, which is Atlanta, which I don't have anything in common with Donald Glover or Lakeith Stanfield, or anything like that on that show either. Yeah. But that sort of drive to hustle and to make it, in whatever your circumstances, that is something that translates to a lot of other stories in a lot of other different contexts. And
it's really interesting to talk about Atlanta, which is a real comp for this, where it's in the South. Mm-hmm. Not a reservation, Reservation Dogs is a reservation in Oklahoma, which somehow felt like more approachable.
Yeah.
In a way, given the small town nature, the communal nature of that experience. Not to say that there's not an element of that in Atlanta, but it's also against the backdrop of, as you've already said, striving for fame, right, or some kind of renown in the hip hop world. So,
like, for so many people, like, you feel locked into what it is that is sort of prescribed for you based on where it is that you grew up. And like, there is something like in some people that, you know, is longing to sort of see like what's out there, what's in California, how can I get there, you know, that kind of thing. And this show kind of speaks to that wanderlust, you know.
Yeah, I grew up going to, you know, every summer and, you know, once a month or every couple months and holidays going to Philadelphia, Mississippi, which is Choctaw country, and going to the reservation there to, you know, either buy baskets or kind of as almost tourism. You know, you're exactly right. Like, you feel that you go back there now and you feel like that experience is exactly what you're saying, is that you could see how it's confining, and you can totally understand how kids would want to break out of that, you know, create their own identity. But that, again, that could be small town anywhere, right? Lower income communities anywhere. So yeah, there's a lot there.
Or it could be that you just want to stay too. I mean,
well, we could come back to that in a minute,
because I mean, there are characters in the show that choose that, right? Willie Jack chooses,
which I think is a profound self-awareness. And I want to go here because one of the things that I was so drawn to in the show was this idea of community. We can slot this into theology. We can slot this into, you know, best storyline or hot takes on the show or whatever. But this idea of community where, and this is not completely or uniquely part of Native American communities, but the idea that we're all related, even if we're not.
Yeah.
That I can call you uncle, cousin, brother, grandfather, grandson. I loved every second of that, every utterance of that, and the way it binds that community together. And then I think there's implications for Big, who is the tribal policeman. You talk about the need for community policing, for people to live where they work and know the communities that they're working in. You see that on beautiful display here. So there's something, you know, I see your notes about kind of the holy aspect of this show. I mean, it really, through that, it instantly felt sacred to me that we were looking at something that was working at a different level, a community that was existing kind of a different level than a lot of the stuff that we watch, certainly that we watch, but I don't know. I just loved it so much.
Are you the eye doctor?
I'm the everything doctor. Toes, backs, assholes. Hey, I remember you. I've seen you around a lot. What is it this time?
I got into a fight. Busted my nose. Can you not tell my mom?
Your mom. Rita, right? She's been working with us for about a year. She's very delightful to have around. So, what does your, father say about your nose?
Well, my dad's really not here that often, so.
Is your mom remarried?
Why?
Just bedside manner. Relax, Bear. Everything's good. So, you got beat up?
Actually, I got jumped. It's because I'm the leader of a gang. Sort of the leader. You know, big responsibilities. Yeah.
Wait till you get older. Life gets much harder. Look at me. You think I like having this job? You think I wanted to be out here this long? 10 years. I don't have a family. I got nothing. Don't get me wrong. I love the Native American people. Very sweet, majestic, very special. I'm trying to grow this out. I'm sick of it. I just want to go back from where I'm from.
China?
No, I grew up in San Diego. I'm Korean, not Chinese. What the?
Oh, I'm sorry. I didn't mean anything like that.
Are you Navajo or Inuit?
Neither.
Okay, then.
Yeah, I guess if I had a hot take about the show, like, you know, we've already kind of touched on a lot of it. It's the sense that, like, it doesn't necessarily matter what the overarching story is. Like, if you have a story for a character, you throw it in, and it can be a comedy, it can be a drama, it can be whatever you need that story to be for that particular episode. Like that's the echoes to Atlanta, right? Where it's like you could have like a bizarre episode of Atlanta.
Let's get weird.
Yeah, exactly. That just shows up out of nowhere, and you're like, wait, what are we doing? Like running through the woods, like after a barbershop, like what is happening right now?
Yeah. Yeah.
And the same thing is true with this show. And in a way, like it even sort of dials it up a notch because it brings in that idea of ancestry and this idea of like, yeah, everyone in the community is uncle, brother, father, sister, all of that stuff. But even your ancestors call you that too, right? When the ghost comes to, and is like doing the same thing of like uncle, brother, sister, blah, blah, blah. You realize that like, it's not just about like these relationships across the community. It's about these relationships across time, it's really cool. And it shows like how everything is connected.
Yeah, that's the sneaky good part with the warrior.
Yeah,
Dallas Goldtooth, the actor who plays a warrior who appears in visions, largely to Bear.
Yeah,
and it would always refer to Bear in like 3 or 4 different familial ways, and it's it's just so.
It's also perfect in like, what if your guardian angel was an idiot? I mean, yeah. I don't know.
Aho! Young warrior. Looks as though you've tasted the white man's lead.
It's only paintballs.
I've had many brothers and sisters meet the same fate in my time.
Are you Crazy Horse or sitting?
No. I'm not one of those awesome guys. No, I'm more of your unknown warrior. Yeah. My name? William Knifeman. I was at the Battle of Little Bighorn. That's right. I didn't kill anybody, but I fought bravely. Well, I didn't actually fight. I actually didn't even get into the fight itself. But I came over that hill real rugged, like, I saw Custer like that. That yellow hair, he was sitting there. Son of the morning star, that guy right there. So I went after him, but then the damn horse hit a gopher hole, rolled over and squashed me. I died there. This horse, actually, a little And now I'm meant to travel the spirit world, find lost souls like you. The spirit world, it's cold. My nipples are always hard. I'm always hungry.
Got it.
Being a warrior, it's not always easy. You and your thuggy-ass friends, what are you doing for your people? It's easy to be bad. It's hard to be a warrior with dignity. Remember that. In my time, we gave everything. We died for our people. We died for our land. What are you gonna do? What are you gonna fight for? I just with you. But for real though, listen to what I said. Marinate on it. Oh.
Yeah, it's just he's trying to do the shouts and the whoops, and he starts coughing, and it's like, it's a good show. I think another thing if I can steer a little bit, where we talk about kind of your favorite scene, sequence, or episode, and I wonder where you would take us with that. I've got a couple ideas, but.
Yeah, for me, and there are two incidents. One that you've probably seen in the first season, and then this character shows up again in the second season. That's the deer woman. There's an
first season for sure.
Yeah. So there's an episode of the show that it's a Big centered episode. So we've already talked about Big, played by Zahn McClarnon, right? He's basically like the reservation police. Yep. And Big has an incident where he sees like this spirit at a robbery when he's a kid. It's called the Deer Woman, right? And she's sort of this vengeful spirit that metes out justice, to those who are being wronged. And the main thing is like, don't get on her bad side, right? And she sort of appears to Big as like this protector, and yet, but like, as if the boogeyman was your protector, it's like, it's mesmerizing and terrifying is how I described it.
She might come for you as well.
Yeah. So anytime the deer woman shows up on the show, I'm just like, I can't take my eyes away. Just totally engrossed.
I don't know that I had like a particular favorite episode in the first season, but there are a couple of sequences, maybe relationships between characters, that moved me to my core. And I want to say, I should have said this from the start. I've said this before on the podcast. It's rare that my wife and I ever really like the same show. And I said, look, I'm going to watch this show for this podcast. And please, if you want to watch the first episode or two with me, let's do it. She was instantly hooked.
Yeah.
And we both were like, how good is this show? Yeah. And she shares this with me. Any scene with cheese.
Yes. My pronouns are he.
The only person on the res saying this. Isn't he the sweetest kid? And what really almost moved me to tears was the first episode where he wheels this blind woman out of a hospital to take her outside, pretending he's her grandson.
Yeah.
Which is kind of cheeky, but also he's so sweet. And then, and spoiler alert, I don't care. In the last episode, he's confessing to her because he thinks he's going to California. I'm not your grandson. And she says, yes, you are.
Mm-hmm.
Of course you are. I mean, I kind of I took a breath. It kind of got me. And it's just, again, I'm coming back to that community and the way it kind of more intimate relationships can form across bloodlines and all that stuff. And I just thought it was in a show where you have somebody like Willie Jack and Bear, to have cheese is kind of an offset of that. It's just so smart. And
hey, cheese. Why don't you say a prayer? You're good at it.
A little long, but go for it, bro. You got this.
Okay. Well, he, she, hers, his, they, genderless being. We're here for our friend Daniel. We just wanted this moment to be significant. Like in the movies, like a never-ending story when the wind blows down to the basement and Ashton realized that he's been reading about himself, but like his inner self was actually Atreyu and...
Jeez.
Sorry.
Keep going, bro.
We didn't get to say goodbye to you, Daniel. And, you know what? To be honest, I've been kind of mad at you. You're my hero, man. Now you're not here to make things right or better. Willie Jack, she cares for her family members. And now she's lost her brother, cousin, friend. And Bear, he lost his best friend. Now a piece of him's missing. And Laura, she lost her hope. Whenever she looked into the future, she'd see you there, man. You're our brother. Remember you for all the good things we've done together. And we're out here for you, man. We just hope we're doing the right thing. Cheese.
And that's the thing, though. Like, that's the thing about the show that just catches you off guard, is that you can go from like side-splitting comedy with like The Spirit or Uncle Brownie or something like that, to just like weeping at, how this show like touched you in a moment.
Yeah.
It's very well done. Like, I'm
starting to feel like this is one of the shows we've liked the most in this podcast. I don't know. I feel like we're glowing over this.
I mean, it's just well written. It's well thought out. Like, hey, it.
Yeah. Okay.
Give something credit if it's awesome.
Best performance.
So it's a tie for me between Zach McClarnon as Big and Paulina Alexis as Willie Jack, who's a character that we haven't. So we talked about Bear. Bear's kind of like the protagonist. Like Bear's kind of the character that we follow a lot at the beginning.
Yeah.
Cheese is the other guy in the group. Alora is like
what a great choice for the name.
Yeah, exactly. She's one of the girls in the group.
She's the brains.
Yeah, exactly. She's always trying to figure out how they can get the cash to go to California. And then there's Willie Jack, who is
where's she been all my life?
I mean, what, like, do we say the word tomboy anymore? Like she comes off as like she's sort of raised by her dad.
What a beautiful relationship that is.
Yeah. Yeah, and the episode that's the Willie Jack centric episode where she's processing her cousin's death and also on a hunting expedition with her dad.
Yeah.
I mean, it's one of, like, I dare you to look at your phone while you're watching that episode of TV. Like, it's impossible.
I'm looking at my phone now at my notes that I took during that show, and all I did was at the end of the episode, I just did like 2 sentences about what the episode was about because I couldn't. Yeah, I couldn't look away.
But then also like all the other great FX shows that are out there right now, The Bear does this really well too. Like you'll get an amazing guest star that just kind of swoops in every now and then. Like Bill Burr will show up, and you'll be like, "Oh my God, Bill Burr's like really good in this."
And he is very good. Yeah, I think I agreed with you. I saw your notes, and I want to show just about Willie Jack. Like, give me like seasons of that, because what insanely talented actress, and her presence and her voice and her toughness, but then her heart, as we see at the end of the season. I don't want to say too much about that, and I think you're right about Zahn. I think this is one of the better things that he's done. Like oftentimes it feels like he's in these bit parts, but
he's got a long career playing Native American characters.
But here it feels like this is a real star in his crown, if you will. And the Redbone sequence, I was like, I thought I would never hear that song the same way again after Guardians of the Galaxy, and now I'm never going to hear it the same way again after Reservation Dogs. Yeah, I gotta say, so yeah, I kind of side with you. Paulina, I agree with you about Zahn, but Paulina for me was kind of my favorite.
Well, just wait until you get to the second season, and you'll never
get into it this weekend. Yeah,
you'll never hear Tom Petty's "Free Fallin'" again.
Oh, I can't wait.
The same way after the second season.
Yeah.
So yeah, and the other thing that I would say is, if you're a Willie Jack fan, I think it's the penultimate episode of the second season. You're just going to be, your jaw's going to be on the floor. Yeah. So
I'm ready.
Come on then. Tell me what's wrong. Brought me the offerings. Let's go.
Well, Bear and Alora don't talk anymore. Well, we hang out, but it's like they're just trying to be polite. Cheese is always with his new grandma all the time, which is good. I don't know, man. It's like, I just feel like we're broken up. And like, we're supposed to be the dream team. In Res Dogs.
Friends grow apart.
Saying like that. It's like everyone's walking around in the sunshine. We're just in the darkness. Bear and Alora especially.
Well, put your hands up on the table, like we just did. Close your eyes. We're gonna have a little prayer. I need your help.
What?
Not you. Keep your eyes shut. Your eyes closed no matter what happens, okay? Just focus on the dark. Take long, slow breaths. Good. Just listen to your breathing for a second. Remember the stories I told you when you were growing up about the people we come from. Generations of medicine people. Caretakers. These are the ones who held us together as we arrived from our homelands. The healers who carried us and buried us as we marched. Men and women whose songs led us through the dark. They're watching you, my girl. You don't need me. You have them. This is the power we carry. When you really pray, they're all around you. All the time.
Oh,
Takes focus, though. Intent. Open your eyes.
Let's turn it over to the theology corner then, just real quick, because we've talked about a lot.
Go. What up, white Jesus?
I want yeah, exactly.
I love anybody that calls out. That's some colonized thinking right there. That's
right. That's right.
Yeah.
Well, this is one of those situations too where you've seen one season and I've seen both, and I'm starting to mix up like the white Jesus references because white Jesus shows up quite a bit.
Okay, that must be the season.
Yeah. But anyway, like the thing from a theology perspective, I think the thing that this show does that is that I wonder about when it comes to really our podcast, which is I talked about it as like a casual nature of talking about religion, of how the spiritual life sort of moves through the community. Like for so many characters on the show, like the spirit world is just a part of life. Like it's just part of what it is that, they're experiencing in the world. Like it's no different from, grabbing a bag of chips, or stealing a truck full of chips. Or something. Like it's all connected, right? Like meat pies and spirits, it's all the same thing, right? And I think that like, for me anyway, growing up in a Christian culture, like that's so divorced from like your regular life. Like I think for a lot of, quote unquote Christians, like you show up for church on a Sunday for an hour, that's that thing. And then the rest of your life is whatever you want it to be. But it's not incorporating that, that's like a thing that you do.
I would push back just a tad on that.
Okay.
But only in the sense of like the way in which people talk about Jesus, or way that some people talk about Jesus in a Southern kind of evangelical culture. Like Jesus is kind of my homeboy, my ride or die. Like there's a sense of like Jesus is always over my shoulder or something like that.
Right. But if you're talking about having visions of Jesus on the regular, like
it's a little different.
Yeah. Like people...
but also I think there's also an openness to this idea of a deeper spirituality that permeates and can be found in other places that aren't specifically religious or explicitly Jesus, which is not true about what I'm saying, kind of about a white evangelical experience of Jesus day to day. best friend kind of thing. So I think there is a difference, but I think there's also something to what you're talking about where like Jesus take the wheel kind of mentality.
Well, I think it is compartmentalized. I mean, it's like,
okay.
Yeah. I mean, I think that like for a lot of people, your religious life is a component of your life, but it's not like, it's almost akin to like your work life or your gym life or whatever, it's this extension of you. Yeah. It's not like, it's not this sort of thing that's incorporated into who you are, right? Like Bear has these visions, and at no point is it like he's a little like weirded out by the warrior that he's been given because he's kind of a fool, right? But like he understands that like this is part of life. Like occasionally these warrior spirits come to you and you have these bizarre conversations with them, and hopefully they give you insight. Or maybe they'll just, mess around with you.
I like this idea that you've touched on about how even in the messiness of our life, or that the possibility that the afterlife or maybe a more purely spiritual life or experience could be as messy as our lived one.
Yeah.
I was involved in this other series of interviews recently with this is going to sound terribly name dropping, but it just is what it is. For a film called Padre Pio, which released recently, Abel Ferrara's biography about the saint, or not really biography. It's kind of two films in one, but part of it is Padre Pio's arrival at this church, and right on the eve of, I believe it's World War I. Shia LaBeouf plays Padre Pio, and we were overseeing some interviews with him, and some various press people were kind of pushing back on him and Abel for kind of, why is there language in the movie?
Yeah.
Like, could you not left that out? And to their credit, they were like, well, we're just basically quoting his letters. Like if you read his letters in his diary, he curses all throughout them. And I can't remember. I think it was, and I know he didn't make this up, but I think it was Shia who said he wasn't a saint when he was alive, right? Like he was a messy person.
Yeah.
Who became a saint after he died, and that has kind of stuck with me a lot when I think about some of the stuff we talk about at the intersections of art or film and, religion and theology. And I think that's what we see here is like, there's this complete openness to messiness, to, I don't like the word brokenness, but like, it's just profoundly human.
Yeah.
Even in its spiritual element is profoundly human. And it works.
Yeah, and it's a passed down tradition, and it's a lived tradition. I mean, that's what I appreciate about it, is like Uncle Brownie, for as weird as he is on this show, he's like this pot dealing, like, sort of recluse, living out in the woods and stuff like that. But he understands that, like, if he wants to stop a storm, he's got to get naked and like go out and like.
I need Uncle Brownie in Mississippi tomorrow. We've been pounded by these storms. I'm going to get on my roof tomorrow naked with an axe and see what happens. I may get kicked out of the neighborhood, but you're exactly right. What's really funny? You just made me think about this kind of lived, passed down tradition. Of course, everybody in that community kind of pushes back against him with that, even though they're part of that tradition. They say, "Oh, you should come to the church basement with us. You're being crazy." It's something that we haven't really talked about either. And another really compelling character, even though she only appears in maybe one or two episodes, is Bear's mother, Rita, who works at a hospital, the reservation hospital. And the episode where they're planning a diabetes awareness event, and they have a rapper who raps about fry bread.
Right.
Which is not what you should be eating if diabetes is ravaging your community.
Right.
We only ever see her make a face. I mean, it's completely understated and perfectly handled, where we know she's like, what is happening, to my community? But it's that she's never she can't say anything because she's not going to stop people from eating fry bread.
Right.
But just like nobody's going to stop Uncle Brownie from hopping on a roof and wielding an axe at a tornado.
Yeah, but you learn these things. Like, these are things that get passed down. So one thing that I will talk about from the second season, because it's like,
Oh yeah,
I think it's important, and you'll experience it. And, you know, I don't think this will affect your enjoyment of it. There's an episode where a family member that we don't really know from the first season is passing away, and you get like this, you know, what harkened back to me. Speaking of like these mirror sort of shared story experiences and stuff. This woman is this grandmother's sort of dying in her bedroom at home. Nothing can be done for her, but all of the sort of elders of the reservation are sort of with her. Sometimes they'll sing around her. Sometimes they'll just sit in the room with her in silence or tell her stories or put chapstick on her lips or something like that. Meanwhile, out in the living room, there's just like a party going on. Like, there's like food and people coming by and like lots of people like gathering and moving in and out and sharing stories and talking about, like, you know, the old days and talking about what's going on right now and, you know, what the kids are up to and stuff like that. And it's this, like, the household becomes like this living organism, right? Where it's like you have this death that's happening at the center of this matriarch of this family, but like the legacy of that matriarch is being lived out in the house, like as she's dying. And it's just, it's one of those things that's like, yeah, it's all connected and it's all passed down. And all of these traditions are like, you know, something that resonate with the community, right? Mm-hmm. Like they live off of this, you know, this tradition and these, you know, these shared experiences and stuff.
Yeah.
And it goes from one generation to another. The beauty of it for me is just the integration of the spiritual life. And it's not a weird thing. It's just another thing that's part of being human, you know?
Yeah, I like that. And I think there's something, if God can be found in anything, it's what you're talking about. It's the intense communality of the communal experience of this reservation life that somehow in all of that mix, if you are inclined to think this way, that somehow the divine emerges from that, like, or is bound up in that, in everything, in the rapper chorus as they ride by on their bikes, you know.
There's a little mic.
It's just everything. Like, it's so beautiful. But,
yeah. Hey, you want to talk industry? It's my favorite part.
Is it too? We're getting there. It is your favorite part, and
it's my favorite part of the pod.
I have like a Kevin Bacon, you know, 6 degrees of separation kind of thing here to talk about. But
nice.
I see where you're going with this. So what are you thinking about industry wise?
Okay, let me just set up, because we've talked about Hulu already and like what is it? It's a mishmash and stuff. But what I will say is that where I'm coming at this is from the FX perspective. FX was a cable channel. Yeah. So FX was a cable channel that I watched quite a bit, but back in the day, so we're talking like early 2000s, you know, into the 2010s and stuff, FX always felt like a junior version of HBO, right? It was like the prestige shows that HBO didn't get. Like, you know, maybe FX will get it. So it's like The Shield instead of The Wire, or Sons of Anarchy instead of The Sopranos. It's like the HBO stuff felt like one step up from like what the FX stuff was. And now that FX is sort of living on Hulu, like I feel that HBO is kind of locked into the safer play, right? Where it's like all their shows kind of start to look a little similar. It's like, okay, we've got like our blockbuster show, like our Game of Thrones or our Succession or something like that. And then we also have sort of these like safe, intriguing shows like Euphoria or The Idol that's on right now. But FX is like, we're just going balls out. Like, we're just doing whatever. Like, give us a good show. And that's how you get things like Atlanta or Reservation Dogs or What We Do in the Shadows, or my favorite show that I'm watching right now, The Bear. You know, it's like, let's just try.
The Bear, we're excited to start season 2 of The Bear. What We Do in the Shadows is one of my favorite shows of the last 5 years. No, I think you're right. I think the comparison is spot on. And it's funny. I don't know if I can go into too much detail for like privacy reasons, but my pastor in Oakland, the church we went to in Oakland, when we lived in the Bay Area, knew John Landgraf, who was the chief of programming for FX, or is for FX. And I won't say how they knew each other, but I mean, they're not like, I never got the sense they were like super close friends, but I remember him speaking highly of John, of being like just a really good dude, of really smart. And if you go listen to some of his like the TCA stuff, the Television Critics Association, when the networks always roll out their new programming for critics, and they have upcoming stars of upcoming series do panels, and they have programming execs talking about the upcoming slate or whatever. If you go back and look through some of those old videos with John Landgraf, he gets it, and he got it really quickly. And I think he even said, like, I'd have to go back and find a couple of them, but I mean, I think this idea of like, we're just going to go for it.
Yeah.
Like, he didn't say this, but it was kind of the sense of, yeah, man, let's get weird. Like, we've got permission now. Like, there's no rules anymore. Like, with all these streamers showing up, and I think this may have been it was certainly pre-Hulu, some of this, where we're just going to go for it. And on top of kind of knowing secondhand that he seemed to be like a genuinely good human, and there's such a heart to all of these shows, though. I'm looking at what you listed here: Atlanta, Reservation Dogs, What We Do in the Shadows, The Bear. Those are profoundly spiritual. Like, there's a lot going on there other than than what's on the surface, right? It's not just a restaurant show. It's not just a vampire show. It's, there's some depth there that kind of ties them all together. And I think FX is in a really strong place, it feels like to me. I mean,
I think so.
One of the biggest shows on TV right now in terms of kind of critical acclaim, and I mean, people seem to love it.
Yeah, I think that's right. And they still have misses, like that Jeff Bridges show that was on I guess it was a year ago, The Old Man. Started off with like such promise, and then it kind of fell off a cliff. Like after
what was the Nick Offerman show? Devs.
Yeah.
That was kind of a miss,
but intriguing.
You're not gonna bat 100 or 1,000 or whatever.
You know where Hulu?
I hate baseball.
You know where FX got me was the whole superhero craze. Yeah. The whole superhero craze. And everybody's like looking for the next Marvel project or something like that. And here comes FX rolling out Legion, which is like this obscure like X-Men villain, and you're like, okay, well, I guess they're capitalizing on like 20th Century Fox properties back when 20th Century Fox was still, its own thing and not owned by Disney. And that Legion show is so weird and just like just divorced from anything that you would think of under the superhero banner. And I was like, I'm in, man. Like, this is great. Like, tell me.
How good was that first season?
Like, I know what a superhero show looks like. I don't need to see another superhero show, but take this character and do something weird with it. I'm on board. And should we do an episode by episode podcast on Legion? Is that what you're saying? Are you asking me if we want to do that? Because I'll do it. It's not like you and I are doing anything else with our lives. Like, I'd love to go back on Legion. Yeah, Legion was a great show. But yeah, it's just like,
because you're right. You had never seen anything like that.
No, absolutely not. Especially in the superhero genre. Are you kidding? Like, even the Disney Plus stuff just plays it so safe. And it's just like, no, like, let go, man. Let it fly. See what happens.
Yeah.
I don't know. I just like for a channel that sort of had its brand kind of locked in my mind of FX. Like, I'm sort of impressed with where they've come like 20 years later from where they started. So.
Yeah.
All right. You want to spin the wheel? See what our next show is?
All right. Spin the wheel. All
right.
I'm going to solve.
All right.
Cornell Curl Cabinet.
Dang, man, we're running out of shows. The wheel's looking empty. Okay. All right. Here we go, Ryan. So the wheel has picked my Netflix pick, which is currently Sandman.
I got to go back and watch that.
Well, here's the thing. I think I'm going to change it.
Oh, we're going to trade up?
I think I'm gonna trade Sandman out because I just finished a series on Netflix and I think I want to talk about it, and that's Beef. I think I want to talk about Beef.
The best series of the year. Done.
All right. So
done. I'm in it. I can't wait to rewatch it. Loved every second of it. I got to see if we know anybody else at Netflix. We need to see if we can do an interview.
All right. So next time we're going to talk about Beef on the show. That's going to be my Netflix pick.
Thank you. Let's just be honest. It's 100 times better than Sandman.
I got to tell you, Sandman was fine for about half a season. If they had just stuck with that first half of the season, they would have been okay. But
Beef is a masterclass in screenwriting. I mean, that just it felt like when the person typed the first word of the first script, they knew where it was going to go.
Yeah, I think so.
Yeah,
I think so. And it's well, okay, we got to save it. We got to save it for the Beef pod.
No,
so
that's a teaser. That's a tease. That's a.
So Beef will be our next show.
That's gonna be so good. Ooh, what a conversation.
Ryan, thank you for hanging out in Oklahoma on the reservation with me. Let's hope we avoid some tornadoes here over the coming months.
And competing gang and warring gang factions.
That's right, and warring gangs. Let's hope nobody calls us a shit ass anytime soon.
That's the only way I refer to my dogs now.
I love it. We'll see you next time.
Sweat dripping down her face, working stove tops.